All right, let's all take a songbook and turn to page 50. I am resolved. Page 50. Page 50. Page 50. There we go. I am resolved no longer to linger, charmed by the world's delight. Things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allured my sight. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. I am resolved to go to the Savior, leaving my sin and strife. He is a true one, he is a just one, he hath the words of life. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. On last verse. I am resolved, and who will go with me? Come, friends, without delay. Taught by the Bible, led by the Spirit, we'll walk the heavenly way. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. Thank you. Have a seat. All right, do you have any spoken prayer requests this morning? Yes. Okay. Huh? I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, keep trusting your prayers. Okay. Anybody else? Brian? Right. Right. Pray for Jace, so he's healing in his ear. That's right. Yes. Okay. All right. Anybody else with prayer requests? Brian? Yeah. Very good. All right. Anybody else? Yeah. Jimmy Haynes. Jimmy Haynes fell. Mm-hmm. Very good. Anybody else? Any unspoken requests that you want to pray about? Confirmation out loud. And pray for Vacation Bible School that we'll see kids come to Christ. All right, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for loving us. Thank you for meeting every need. Thank you for the praise reports this morning and all you've done for us. And I pray that you answer prayers. Pray for Tracy for healing in her ear, and for hearing to be restored, and other medical needs, and other go across the auditorium, Lord, spoken and unspoken. And pray for Jace. And Lord, thank you for the praise reports, Lord, that you hear and answer prayers, and how you've worked our church family and brought blessings. And I pray you bless, especially this week with Vacation Bible School, the families that we've invited that we'll see come to Christ. And I pray you'll use us today for your glory. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen. All right, you'll be dismissed to Sunday school. Okay, Jared's not here because Jared and Becca took Jace to the Health Plus and Express, and to see he knows him yesterday, pouring on his ear, but they couldn't get the doctor yesterday, I guess. So pray for his healing. So turn to Genesis 17. Genesis 17. We're going to start reading, and I have a couple kind of tell part of the story, and then you have questions or comments, and it's just regular Sunday school, and you got questions, we got answers, right? May not be right ones. No, actually, we'll find the right answers in the Word. All right? This is why you look at me like that. Like you were laughing at me and I hadn't said anything yet. Okay? In the other Sunday school class, with kids class, we've been looking at Abraham a lot and telling different stories from Abraham. Abraham had a nephew. Does anybody remember his name? Lot. That's correct. Lot. Okay. So, when God called Abraham, of course, they didn't have scriptures to go by. So look at this way for a minute. We're going to read in just a minute, but in maybe 10 minutes before we get to the reading part. When God called Abraham, he said, I want you to leave Ur of the Chaldees, if you look it on the map, and I want you to travel several hundred miles. And he had his wife, he had his father, and he had his nephew with him. And so they traveled this distance, and after a while his father died after they went to one place. And then they went down into what is now the land of Israel, and God promised Abraham this land. And so Lot was with him the entire time, right? So until they got, so Lot, all the blessings that Lot had, every good thing that he had was a result of being with Abraham. Lot's parents had passed, I guess when he was a child, because he'd been with Abraham all his life. So everything that Lot had was a result of being with Abraham, right? So he had blessings, and they had such an abundance at one point that Lot's herdmen were fighting with Abraham's herdmen, and so Abraham and Lot didn't have any problem, but their workers did, because there wasn't enough land for all of them. So Abraham said, you choose one direction, I'll go the other. If you go north, I'll go south. You go east, I'll go west, doesn't matter to me. And Abraham was like that. He didn't, God had led him there, he was going to bless whatever he did anyway. And so Abraham chose him the well-watered plains towards Sodom. He looked towards this city, and towards what he said, this looks beneficial to me. So he moved down towards this city called Sodom. And we know the process of time, Lot he just lived near the city with his sheep and camel and ox and all that he had. He ended up moving into the city to where by the time we get to Genesis chapter 17, he is now living in the city. He is like a leader of the city, but the land of Sodom is a wicked place. It's where the word sodomy comes from, homosexuality, they like to use the term gay. The biblical term for it is sodomy. There's other words for it, and so he has moved his family to a place where there's absolutely no boundaries of what is right and wrong. Okay, so we'll read a couple verses. Okay, Genesis chapter 17. And what 17? I got the right one. Yeah, 17 verse 15. Because we're going to pick up back on. I wanted to give you that information on Lot, and then we'll go back into Abraham. We'll go back and forth between the two. Okay. Genesis 17, look at verse 15. And God said unto Abraham, as for Sarah thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Why? Because Sarah's 90 years old, and he's 100 years old, right? Okay, or close to that, right? So he fell on his face and laughed. And said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, that is 90 years old, bear? And Abraham said unto God, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed. Stop reading right there. Okay, so God's promise, and he's already made this promise to Abraham before, that Sarah was going to have a child, or that he would have a child. So he thought, Sarah's plan, that Sarah brought Hagar, her handmaid in, Egyptian handmaid, and so Abraham has a son named Ishmael through Hagar. But God calls him, Abraham again. He said, it's not Ishmael. That's not the promise I made you. Okay, I made you a promise, and the promise will come through Isaac. Okay, the word Isaac means laughter in their language. Okay, so when Abraham at age 100 finds out again Sarah's going to have a baby, he falls on his face and laughs. Would you? Ladies might not. At age 90, you might not laugh about it, but Abraham just fell on his face and laughed because God has blessed him in everything he's done. Okay, his entire life. Okay, only a couple of verses. Look at chapter 18. Look down verse 12. We're going to read the same thing. Okay, right. Same part of the story. Chapter 18, verse 12. Therefore Sarah laughed. God's speaking to Abraham again, but this time Sarah can hear him. Okay? Look at verse 10. And he said, I will certainly return to thee according to the time of life. God doing talking, lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of a woman. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxen old shall I have pleasure in my Lord also. And the Lord said to Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of a surety bear a child when I'm old? Is there anything too hard for the Lord? Stop reading right there and look up this way. Okay? This is about Abraham, but we're going to go back to Lot in just a few minutes. Okay? So when God tells Abraham was called a friend of God in other scriptures, right? So when God tells Abraham, who's 100 years old, that Sarah's going to have a baby, he just falls down laughing, right? Right? When he says it publicly again, or when he says it where Sarah, she's in the tent door, and God is talking to Abraham, and it's God in the flesh. So I think, me personally, I think it's Jesus standing there in the flesh, standing talking to him, because anytime he shows up in the Old Testament several times, and standing there as a man, then I think it's Jesus standing there, the flesh of God. So he tells him, he's standing there talking to Abraham, says Sarah's going to have a baby, and Sarah's in the tent door, and she laughs. And he said, why did Sarah laugh? And she said, I didn't laugh. I wasn't laughing. I wasn't laughing. He said, is anything too hard for the Lord? Now, when I'm reading through these stories, and we've been teaching some of this to the kids, when I'm reading through all the stories of Abraham, everything he does, he's blessed in, right? Even like Joseph, if you read through the story of Joseph on over later on in Genesis, he's imprisoned, he's lied about, he's sold into slavery, all these stories of Joseph, but everywhere you go, you also read that Joseph is blessed by God. When you read through the story of Abraham, everything he does prospers. Just like reading Psalm 1, whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. So you have, on one hand, you have one guy who walks with God. God refers to him as a friend, and God says, I know that he will command. Look at this, another verse. 1 chapter 18. Look at verse 19. This is what God says about Abraham. Okay? For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that's what he has spoken of him. Stop reading right there. So God says of Abraham, I know him. He's going to command his children, his grandchildren, and his household after him. And they're going to keep the way. They're going to keep my promises to people. And they're going to keep my boundaries, the way of the Lord, my boundaries. And I'm going to bless him. And everything I've ever said to him is going to come to pass. Okay? Okay. I'm going to contrast this with Lot. Okay? Lot has a choice to make. And we'll go back through his history without reading it. Lot has a choice to make at one point where they've got so much stuff. His herdmen are fighting with Abraham's herdmen. And Lot chooses for himself his way. What looks good to him, instead of saying turn back to Abraham, say, whatever you want to do, I'll do it. Okay? When I read the story of Abraham and Lot, there have been people in my life, and I can name a couple of them, Preacher Dave, my dad, my bosses, a couple of my bosses that I've had, where I would say to them, whatever you want to do is fine with me. Okay? I had somebody ask them. Someone called me this week. We changed companies. Our company got bought out a month ago. And so one of my bosses, two of them were riding in the car, and they called me this week, and they asked me about something financially, my pay. It doesn't really matter, but they brought this up to me while they were driving to them, and I said, what are you going to do? Why? Because it doesn't really matter. God's going to bless me no matter what happens. I rest assured in these promises that it doesn't really, I'm not going to say I want this or demand this. And I've known people that have said, I want my way, I want my way, I want my way. I will demand, I will demand, I will demand until I get my way. I very seldom meet those people that are really happy with life. When we read through the story of Lot, he moved towards the city of Sodom. He moved into the city of Sodom. When God sends angels to deliver him from the city of Sodom, because God's going, in chapter 18, God tells Abraham he's going to destroy Sodom. So when angels come, just as they look like men, and they come to Lot's house, you need to come with us. We're leaving. God's going to rain down fire and brimstone. The whole place is going to be destroyed. You got to come with us. Lot goes to his daughters, his married daughter or daughters, how many there are. It goes to them and says, you need to come. And they think he seems like one that mocks to them, right? Because he's not been serving God all this time. And all of a sudden, judgment is coming. It's been pronounced, and judgment is coming. And they say, well, they again cared about God for the last 40 years anyway. Why should we worry about what you're saying now, right? Of course, they perish when Lot is destroyed. When the angels come to Lot's house with him, he brings them into the house. The men of Sodom come to beat on the door and say, send those men out. We want to know them. It's not like they're asking for business cards to know them. It's the Old Testament term for knowing them. They want to abuse the men that have come to Lot's house. In a perverted way, they want to abuse these men. And Lot offers his two daughters that are still in the house. Right? I still have 2 daughters left in the house. They don't know that. I'll send them out to you. And God's like, you can do that. Okay? Okay? Some of the stuff you read in the news today, right? I mean, they sold off their 14-year-old daughter for $150 or whatever. Recent in the news. Okay. Okay. When I read through these stories, I see one person that is always content, other than at one point where he said, God, you made this promise, and I still don't have a son yet. Okay? You promised me a son, and we're 100 years old and hadn't had a son yet. Okay. But he wasn't really questioning. I mean, he was asking God when, not really saying, God, you hadn't completed your promise. When I read through these stories, I read of a man that has said, okay, God, whatever you want. Okay? Whatever you want. And I think when God told him to leave Ur of the Chaldees, I don't think he was supposed to take his father with him, but just by the fact that he was honoring his father, he took his father with him. Okay? Until his father passed, and God lets him down in the nation of Israel. So I read about a man that is blessed and blessed and blessed beyond measure, because all he says is, okay, God, whatever you want to do. Okay? Then I read about another guy who was brought up with him that has abundance of wealth because of him, right? Because of Abraham. That's what Lot has, what he has. It makes all of his decisions based on what looks good to him at the time. Okay? Now, when I read this, Uh, you have a person that has a life in abundance and laughter. And you have another person that says, I want my way and a life of grief. So when I read this, my question is, which way do you choose? On every decision you make, you tell me. When you weigh out, I remember someone told me this years ago, you make a list of the cons and pros or whatever, that's the good things, the bad things, and you make that list, you make your decision based on that list. You ever do that? You ever been taught to do that? Weigh it out. I mean, you like buying a car or whatever, you say, this one has this, this, and this, and this one has this, and this, which one we're going to do? Or taking a job, you said this one has these benefits, and these has these benefits, and you make that list, and you go, okay, is that a good idea? I think it's a good idea sometimes, at times, right? You say, am I going to a business decision or job decision or whatever it is? Okay. But Lot kept making decisions based on what he wanted. Okay? Until his daughter or daughters, how many there are, that are married, won't listen to him when he says judgment is coming. When finally the angels have to grab him and his wife and his two daughters and drag them out of town because judgment is coming, and they're not going to listen to anything. Wait, just one more minute. The angel's like, we don't want to be here when the fire and brimstone starts falling, right? So we're taking you. We're getting that. And as they leave town, Lot's wife looks back and turns to a pillar of salt. Right? They're told not to. She disobeyed because her heart is back there in the city with all the sodomites and all the good things of life that she's had. How do we make our decisions? How do you make your decisions? It's anything based on whatever you want. Huh? You pray. But you ever say to somebody else whatever you want? Okay, ladies. How many ladies in this room would say, tell your husband, whatever you want, we'll do it? Okay? Jamie's eyebrows going, huh? Are you crazy, brother? How many would say, how many would say to your boss at work, whatever you want to do, I'll do it? You ever do that? Y'all like that? Anybody? I mean, whatever you say, yes sir, no sir, I'll be glad to do it, right? Dave was in the military for 35 years or whatever. Yes sir. I mean, that means stupid. His mind, sometimes he might say that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Say, yes sir, we're glad to do it. Okay, right, Brian? That's the way you do it. Yes sir, I'll do it. Okay, we'll have a discussion after that. I'll show you that you were wrong. Okay. Right. How many can do the same thing with God all the time on every decision that you have to make? I don't care. I'm not talking about what you want to do for lunch or whatever. You know, you may turn to sit and say, Jason turns to Marcia and says, "Where you want, where we're going, or where you fixing?" Okay. But how many can honestly look back on your life and say, well, whatever you want to do for God, because everything's turned out right. Anybody's life perfect? Absolutely, positively perfect. There's no flaws. Never been a flaw. Never been had problems. Okay. Well, that's part of life, right? The problems that we've had, right? Whether it's financial, work, family, whatever, outlaws, in-laws, whatever the story goes, right? So everyone has had those situations. It's a life in health issues, right, Tracy? Health issues. But in reality, I think about this, and I'd written this lesson because I didn't know I was going to teach it here. I'd written this lesson out for the kids that I was going to have in class, look at the kids I have sometimes in class. That in reality, some of us can look back over 40 years or longer, for me, times been 40 years, looking back and say, okay, God, whatever you want to do, we're on board. Okay? And it's been a life of laughter. Sometimes it's people laughing at us, right? And sometimes it's us laughing along with God. Because it's really, I listened to a message one time where people had this, probably about 10 years ago, 20 years ago now, where some churches had this laughter thing going through. I heard a preacher, he was telling something in his message, who loved the preacher. He was trying to preach his message, and at that church, people started doing this laughter thing. It's kind of talking in tongues. They'd laugh out loud. And he was like getting them calmed down because he was trying to get the message. He was trying to get a message of salvation to lost people in the crowd, and he couldn't get the message out because people were interrupting with their laughter. Okay, anyway, How many can look back and say it's been a life of joy and laughter? Okay? Because you think your son Isaac, I'm glad we didn't name Rebecca Isaac, I guess, but she might not like that name, but I would have thought it was funny. I wanted to call her Mephibosheth. If she'd been a boy, we would have called her Mephibosheth, that was Jonathan's son in First Samuel. She would not have liked Mephibosheth, probably the third grade for me when I spell it, right? Okay. How many can look at decisions that you made? This is what I wanted, and I got it. I wish I hadn't. Anybody? Am I the only one? You not in everything, but it's for a certain thing. You make a decision. You say, "I'm going to get what I want. I got what I want," and I wish I hadn't. Right? Okay. Don't point at Jamie like that. That wasn't fun. That's fine. I thought it was fun. Okay. 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 Then in reality, every one of us there's a straight and narrow path that we can follow. And if I read this right, in all the stories that I know, I mean, even like Joseph going to prison and different things that are happening, down that path it's not a rosy path. It doesn't mean you're never sick. It doesn't mean you never have health problems or financial problems, or you never have family problems or work problems. It doesn't mean everything's perfect all the time, right? It doesn't mean your house not going to leak when your torrential rainstorms come through, like it did. What was it, Wednesday or something? That one day this week the storms came through. That doesn't mean your roof's not going to leak or you can't get them fixed. We still have those problems, but you can go through life with this joy and laughter. Okay, I mentioned last week that last year during preparation for Vacation Bible School, Cindy was standing over here at the door, and she was watching Kelly and Riley laugh. Okay, they were in here doing. We love what they do, right? Everybody loves what they do, and Michelle's in on it, and Rebecca helps some. But we love what they do. And they had this idea, and you just give them a theme, and an hour later, there it is, right? Well, I know. Okay, about 40 hours this week. They've been at least 40 hours. I've already spent it. And once you go down the hallway, they said, "Well, they did that. They did all that in 40 hours. Now they did all this and down the hallway and the classrooms and everything else that you'll see." They did that in the last since Wednesday night. They've been working on this. They went home twice. Okay. But Cindy said they were here laughing so hard they couldn't get out of the floor. Right? Is that right? Is that right, Cindy? Right? So she had Michelle had to see this because these two ladies that are mature adults are laughing so hard they can't get out of the floor. Okay. Huh? I know, I can't. I know. I plugged it. But she said, can't get off the floor anyway. I plugged in the PA under here, and I was trying to crawl back up, after getting on my knees to plug the PA thing in. And Brian said, "You help?" I said, "Yeah, getting up." But, yeah. Okay. I look at life in maybe this is why I had joy almost all the time. People ask me why I'm grinning. That's probably because I'm mischievous more than anything else. But it's the idea of not like Jim Summers, who's always laughing at people, right? Jim Summers, right? Came from being a high school teacher, right? High school math teacher. You got to learn to laugh at people real quick. Okay, but laughing with, okay, because it's abundant life. If you don't have that, then we ask you how Sodom tastes to you. Of making decisions and say, I want to go towards Sodom, I want to go towards Sodom, I want to go towards Sodom. Look, our nation's going towards Sodom fast as we can, right? The transgender homosexuality stuff is being promoted everywhere, right? I mean, it's on kids' cartoons, right? And adults have told me that they're watching the cartoon with the kids, and it is being, is this right? It's being promoted. What do you do about that? Why don't you throw the TV out the window? Okay. Nobody's on. I paid $900 for that thing. Okay. Put something on it that says, you're not going to watch that show, or get rid of that channel, right? So you watch only the videos, Little House on the Prairie, or whatever it is. That's Carly says, we had to watch those shows. They were so boring. They sleep well because you fall asleep during the show. Okay. Then you limit the input of the world on your family, or you limit the input on the world on your life. because the drain of um, okay, the transgender thing. Last spring in Virginia, um, a girl was molested by a boy that was transgender in the girls' bathroom. Okay, now most of this, if you watch ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, or CNN, you never heard this story. Okay, this girl was molested by a boy in her junior high school, and so they just moved them to another school. Okay, and so when the Board of Education, and this is to me, this is the exact opposite of joy and laughter that should be in America today, because we're taking our whole nation down a drain as fast as we go. And so when the school moved that kid to another school, then they were having a county school board meeting on promoting transgender activity at their high school system, within their school system. That the dad of that girl that was molested stood up in the meeting and said, "We can't do this." And as up to this point, nobody publicly knew the name of his daughter, that she was the one they just knew something had happened, right? There wasn't going to be public. But he stood up in a public meeting and said, "You can't do this, because this is what you're doing. You're moving the problems like the Catholic Church did 40 years ago, 30 years ago. They kept moving the pedophile priests from one place to another and hiding it, and they, hey, it's nothing wrong with it. Okay, those kids will survive. Now they got $1 million lawsuits against them. Okay, and so the dad that stood up in the school board meeting said, "You can't do this. My daughter's the one. This is what happened, and now you're trying to sweep it under the rug and and say it's okay." Okay, he's now listed as a domestic terrorist in the United States by our U.S. government, federal government, judicial system. He's not okay. When I look at this stuff, Brother John, how can you still have joy and laughter? Because we could take our families and say, let's keep going the right way. Let's make right choices. What happens when there's a crowd of people, or a few people, straight and narrow ways, few people, when this group of people keep going the right way, doing the right thing all the time? You know what happens? Everything else gets darker and darker and darker. That light shines brighter and brighter and brighter. In Sunday school, a lot of times we talk about getting the gospel out. By you doing and choosing right, it'll make your light shine brighter all the time. It gives you the opportunity to witness. And people will say you're a hater. Okay, people take what I'm saying today, what I'm saying right now in Sunday school class. People could take that and say, well, we need to remove your federal tax ID thing, because take this away from the church and persecute the church, whatever, because of it. And people will call me a hater because of it. Every homosexual person that I know knows that I care about them, right? And and I know there's people in the church know that they know, and their homosexual child knows that their brother John Mustaine to care about them, right? Want the best for them. We'll pray for them when they break a leg or have an accident, they're in a hospital emergency room. We'll be the ones standing beside them praying with them, okay? But we're not going to condone what they're doing, right? Okay, why? Because condoning is like taking a step towards Sodom and saying it's okay, right? Y'all with me on this? Anybody got questions? I've been all talking. Comments, questions? What's wrong with Brother John? We read over through Deuteronomy and find out what's wrong with it. We read Romans chapter 1 find out what's wrong with it, right? Okay. Then our Christianity ought to be something that really shines as a bright light, because we're doing the right thing. We got families coming to Smithfield tomorrow for Vacation Bible School, and they'll come in here and they love this, right? And they love what's going to go on in the classrooms, the crafts, the music, the games, everything. Everybody in that church is involved in one way or another. Everyone's has a role to do. Okay. By doing that, we're showing a really bright light to some kids who got a really dark life. Because there's kids that are oh, that's the right term, circling the drain, right? Because their life is going that way. I was talking to someone yesterday. I was outside, talked to a man, and he pointed at this child that was with his children, and he says, "Dad's addicted to heroin, his mom's whatever. Hey, I can't really say it was his mom, but it's, and so and so just died this week. And I thought that kid needs help, right? That kid. I mean, he may be. And Michelle's not in here. Michelle has that little that child on Wednesday night. She may went, oh, I don't want the child in here on Wednesday night. Okay, tie him up, put duct tape across him, strap, any bungee cords to hold him down. He needs help, right? Where's he else going to get it? He's going to go to school and he's going to teach him he came from an animal. Is that right? He's going to be taught evolution. He's going to be taught that there's no boundaries of right and wrong because you come from an animal. Dogs don't have boundaries, right? Unless you put up a electric fence or something that shot collars in. Cat doesn't have boundaries, right? Monkeys, they can do whatever they want, right? And so we teach these kids this stuff. That, where's the boundaries? Okay, then we have the opportunity to shine a really bright light, to be different from everybody else, to be the Abrahams in our community, right? You have that opportunity on your job site, wherever you're working, okay? I joke with Tracy and say she's employed by the state. They don't work. You say work. She said, "What did you say?" I said, "It wasn't funny, but John." Okay, yeah. Yeah. No, okay. Any questions or comments? Is there supposed to be boundaries? Is there? Right? We live by them. We have more fun in the boundaries than the people that play outside the boundaries. Right? You ever play basketball with someone where there's no boundaries on the sides? Right? You ever play in a softball game or a baseball game, and someone hits the ball and you can't really determine was it foul or fair, and you get a brawl on the field because of the fight over there was a foul. I remember that when we were 18 years old playing the ball game, and the fight is our team said it was a fair ball, their team said it was a foul ball, so everyone got a big fight over it. Okay, when there's no boundaries, what is right and wrong, right? It's terrible to live life that way, right? Who had more fun with his life, Abraham or Lot? The one who had a conversation with God and fell on his face laughing. Okay, not laughing like mocking God, but laughing because you can't. Really, I'm 100 years old, right? Okay. Questions? Comments? Where's the boundaries? Right here. And I'm like this, the boundaries never change. What's right and wrong never changes. Well, Brother John, we got a little bit different now than what people were 20 years ago. Yeah, but right and wrong still ain't changed. We had a conversation yesterday. Some of us had a conversation about children that talk different to their grandparents than what we talk to our grandparents, right? You wouldn't hear back talk to the grandparents when you were a kid? They wouldn't. I did. Like one time, I remember disobeying my grandmother. We live in the house where she lived, and I crossed Route 21 with Miss Joe's son-in-law. Yeah, Miss Joe's son-in-law. Of course, we're only 8 years old at the time. And I crossed Route 21. That was one of the only rules we had. You can't cross Route 21. Everybody knows where we live in. And of course, the interstate wasn't there. There's all traffic and stuff was on 21. And so I disobeyed my grandmother one time by crossing 21 with Roger to go see Mr. Christie's ponies. And I remember why I went. And I turned around, there's my sister and my cousins coming back to get me. And I went back to the house and got beat within an inch of my life. And never crossed 21 again. And I still won't cross the right now. And 50 years later, I'm still afraid to cross 21. I still think I said her exact words. Okay. Why? The kids had no boundaries, are brought up with no boundaries. Are they happy? Charlie? Charlie's a teacher, right? Charlie says 8th graders that have never been told no in their life. I was teaching teen class one time when someone said, I've never been spanked in my life. I said, yeah, everyone could tell. We knew that. You didn't tell us. Right? That's one of the points where we're laughing, like Mr. Summers was laughing at somebody, not with somebody. Right? Okay. What's the boundaries then, Brother John? Whatever the world says to do is wrong. It comes down to that. What God says to do is right. Okay? Let God be true and every man a liar. So you live within those boundaries. You can have conversations with God. You can laugh. Well, John, I can't laugh about stuff. You can. Okay. Anybody in here when you're praying ever chuckle about stuff? You do that? Brian says, no, prayer is supposed to be a serious matter. Hey, God made peacocks and monkeys and your child. He's got a great sense of humor, right? So, right? He knows. So you can laugh about stuff when you're talking to him, but the stuff we're supposed to be serious with, it's not very reverential. I know. He's the creator of heaven and earth, right? You ever do something and you walk away from a situation that does really good, okay? I'm not just talking about a restaurant meal or something like that. I'm just talking about a situation in life where you walk away and you say, God, thank you for what the outcome of this thing is, okay? I remember leaving the courtroom with somebody from our church, leaving the courtroom with them. Walk away and say, thank you. Because God's provision, God's good to us all the time, okay? And even I'll give this illustration. Even the judge called me out in the courtroom and said, I want to talk to you outside. Right? Because he knew I was a pastor, and he said, I want to talk to you for a minute. Okay. And we just stood outside in the hallway and just talked for a couple minutes. And he was a Christian guy. He was just rejoicing. Yes, that's the situation we're talking about. And we just spent a few minutes just rejoicing. Okay? Me and the judge. Really? Because the judge was an Abraham, a 70-year-old Abraham. He said, well, it's been good. Life's been good. Okay, questions, comments? Are you a Lot or you're an Abraham? We should look around the room and see a bunch of Abrahams. Okay? Laugh. Okay? We're going through this week. I put on the Patch Pirate outfit tomorrow, and every time we put that on for the last 40 years, every time I put that outfit on, I think we're fools for Christ's sake. That's what Paul said. I sailed my ship from sea to sea and rout the fiercest enemy. Okay, why? And get the kids to laugh, all right? And then they listen to Charlie's lesson, right? Right, Charlie? That's that whole plan. And Charlie says, I hope so. Okay. No, if not, we'll get the duck out. Okay. Just kidding. We don't get to get the duck. Okay. Comments, questions? Thank you, Lord, for loving us. Thank you for the truth you've given us in your word. Help us all of us to be Abraham, to set our mind on you, our goals on you, to glorify you, and not take it lightly, but have fun on the way. Thank you for the blessings you've given us. Thank you for the blessings of the people that are in this room, in this church, that have invested in our lives throughout our entire lives. Help us to turn around and invest in those around us this week. Make us a blessing to others. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen. All right.